Good morning. I'm René Guzman, features writer here at the Express News, and we are here today to celebrate life, legacy, really the legend of the Queen at Tejano music, Selena Quintanilla Perez. In her short life, the Lake Jackson native left enormous impact on Tejano music, pop culture, fashion. She was the multi-hyphenate when it comes to talents. And of course, we remember her most, for just that powerful voice, those great songs, Bitty Bitty Bom Bom, Como la Flor, even her English hits, Dreaming of You, I Could Fall in Love. And, of course, we remember that look, just that, uh, those signature ruby red lips, that long flowing hair, just that presence she had. Not to mention her fashion style. The bustiers that you could see from outer space, and of course that iconic purple jumpsuit that she wore for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, one of her last concerts, just about a month before she died. This end of this month does mark 30 years since she was murdered by Yolanda Saldívar, the former president of her fan club. Saldívar actually is up for parole at this time. Um, but we want to focus, of course, on her life, Selena's life and legacy, and we want to celebrate that. And we have two perfect experts here in studio to do that. We have Sonia Aleman, PhD. She is an associate professor in race, ethnicity, gender, and sexuality studies department. I think I got that right in one breath. And Mexican American Studies program at the University of Texas at San Antonio. She developed and teaches a course on Selena, a course that she has taught most fall semesters since 2020. We are also joined by Ramon Hernandez, legend in his own right in Tejano music. He has chronicled, photographed, met, you name it. When it comes to Tejano music, he has been sort of the keeper of that information. Historian, journalist, photographer. He was also there when Selena was first coming up as a talent, back when she performed with Selena y los Dinos with her sister and brother. And he was, when I say there, he was there. He was on Big Bertha, the tour bus, at times. He was, photographing those concerts, those early shows she did. He also photographed her for several of her early albums as well. Ramon, in addition to all of that, is commissioner of the Texas Music Hall of Fame. We want to hear from you. This is live Q&A. We welcome your questions, and we would do our best to answer those with the time we have. And we're encouraging you to use that Q&A button that you see so that you can send your questions to these fine experts. I guess one of first things that I want to kind of get into is, we look at Selena 30 years later, and, sadly, these are times when, we reflect on what might have been. Um, but I wonder, I'd like to ask each of you this question because I think I find it fascinating is just, in your head and hearts, what is it about Selena that resonates, that continues to resonate with what's now a new generation of fans? Sonia, I'll ask you
Sure.
first. We'll go straight down. How about that?
Sounds good. Well, thank you for the invitation.
Sure,
It's my
sure.
pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. And that is the big question that drives a lot of what keeps us talking for 16 weeks of the semester and a class about Selena is why. What is it that's happening? Both what she offered in terms of her own talent and the legacy of her music that she left, but also what is it that are still the conditions of experiencing a Mexican American identity or a Latino identity that continues to have a draw for her or a need for her to fulfill. And so we look at least in the space that I've created and have been a part of, we look for how other scholars have answered that question. Like what are the things that they have observed? What are the things that they've noted in the last 3 decades that have could be identified as contributing factors to what it is about her that has kept her legacy so strong. And so they include a range from, the quality of the music that she produced, um, the undeniable talent that she herself possessed, her charisma as a performer, her very accessible and humble personality that those who knew her describe her as, characterize her as, to the kind of practices and customs of Mexican identified or Latino identified communities about how to honor and remember someone. Um, and then I also think, just based on my own disciplinary training and the areas of my own scholarship, that there's still a continued need for representation for those communities. And so there is a need to want to see ourselves reflected. And so she's been the best um, model for that, the best individual that has both been embraced and accepted, but also because of what everything that she represented as an aspiration of who we want to be, we want to continue to strive for, as well as sadly, right, marking the continued injustices that systemically that community has faced, right? Her loss kind of like as a stand-in for that. Um, the larger barriers that those communities have faced, experiencing marginalization, and those are still true 30 years, after that point, when we
Well,
lost her.
well, and I think too, that like so much about Selena is timeless.
Mhm.
And Ramon, I want to get some questions here, but I did want to get your thoughts as well, as far as you were there as she was coming into her own. Uh, and of course, her legacy lives on. I mean, what do you think it is about her now that, still speaks to so many fans?
I'm happy, I'm elated that her legacy carries on. Having seen her when she was a diamond at the rough at Rosedale Park at the Delmiro Garcia production, Tejano Thirsty Stance, I could see the innate talent. And when I spoke to Abraham and I came into the picture, one thing that struck me about Selena was her ganas,
Yeah.
this persistence, this want to succeed no matter what. And most important, her family was there for her. Abraham was there for her. And I think what's reflected in most photographs of Selena in the early days is the joy, the love of life, the vitality through the eyes. I mean, she just had that sparkle
Mhm.
and that killer smile,
Yeah.
and that carries, to this day.
Yeah. I mean, there's something we always talk about the accessibility. I think relatable, those words come up a lot when we
Mhm.
talk about Selena, and you don't often associate those words with an icon.
Mhm.
Um, and she was, as much as she is rightfully called, the queen of Tejano music. I mean, she was really of the people, of gente. She just had that relatability. Um, we're getting into some questions here. One of the viewers asked, Selena and her brother's influence in Tejano music. Of course, AB having written so many of those great songs. How do y'all see Tejano music evolving and changing in the future? Ramon, certainly you're well familiar with its past and present. So, I think this would be something you could take. What do you think about Tejano music evolving and
Well, we
changing?
have to recall that Selena, when she started, she was doing both Spanish language and English language songs, tunes.
Mhm.
We're in the United States of America. She's first and foremost American of Mexican descent. And a lot of people don't like the word Tejano. They prefer Chicano.
Mhm.
But she came from the barrio, and people know it, 709 Bloomington Street, and in the barrio Molina and Corpus Christi. And I think she wanted to be like the role model. And I think she felt a responsibility, eh, something about her that, that she's going to be a historical figure. Even then, as a little girl, you could just feel it, see it, sense it, whatever you want to call it.
And in terms of that her music, certainly that voice and her those great songs and her brothers, the songwriting,
Mhm.
how would you say that they did influence the Hana music, in terms of they mixed a lot of sounds in their music. And I think it certainly speaks to how Tejano has evolved. She certainly put it on a bigger map, made it more mainstream. In terms of that music, I mean, how would you you know, you mentioned about her as a role model. I mean, in terms of that evolution in music, how would you say that she and her brother made that impact? How did they change the music in that
Well,
sense?
they grew up on American music. They grew up on Mexican music, but they took a step. They took it a step further.
Mhm.
In other words, they modernized it. They brought new beats into it. Even after Selena passed, I spoke to AB,
Mhm.
and this is prior to the Cumbia Kings. And I said, listening to that Cumbia Kings album,
Yeah.
I could hear Selena's voice in there. He says, "You're right. I wrote those songs for her.
Mm.
Had she not passed, all those songs would have been recorded by Selena."
Wow.
And AB kept up with the Cumbia Kings. And one thing we have to accept, especially for the old timers,
Mm.
there's such a thing as evolution. So they're part of that evolution of Tejano music to what it is today.
Absolutely. Just want to remind everyone, thank you again for joining us for this latest In Vivo live event, as the name says, In Vivo. Um, Interactive event that it is. We welcome your questions. Again, please submit them, to our panel using the Q&A button. We'll certainly get to those as best we can. Another one of those questions that has come up is, how would y'all describe Selena's relationship with San Antonio, both during her life and, of course, since then? Why do you think she chose to spend so much time here? I mean, I'm a San Antonio native. I'm, born and raised. So I'm a bit biased to say that yes, this was her home away from home, or maybe even the home. No, I'm getting lost in that. But it certainly was like a second home to her, and I think so much of San Antonio to this day considers her a daughter of the city. So, how would y'all describe that relationship that she had and continues to have with the city?
It was for me that specific relationship was one of the reasons why it made perfect sense to propose the class for the University of Texas at San Antonio. I mean, San Antonio is the Tejano music capital of the world, and it certainly
Mhm.
felt like that epicenter as a young college student here in the early 90s, attending St. Mary's University. So I remember the vibrancy of the city then, right? Like really um, upholding that market of music and coming back, so many years later, it's still very much woven into the fabric of the city. And so it was very easy for me to make the case that if there's going to be a class about Selena in the state of Texas, it has to be in
Mhm.
in this space.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was very clear in how I understood um, the continued presence that she had and the visibility that she had that was so it's so evident here. And one of the other ways that um that that realization came was made clear to me was prior to moving back to San Antonio in 2015, I spent 11 years out of state living in Salt Lake City, Utah. And because my family and my husband's family are both from South Texas. We made a trip home every year during that a little over a decade. And it was really clear how present she still was, even in the 2 weeks, that we would get to spend here. Whatever time of year it was, you would still hear her voice, hear her music, see her image someplace in the city, whether it was because it was painted on a wall, because it was on a piece of merchandise that were readily available. It was just really, really obvious, right, how much she still is an important element of the city. So those are the reasons why I'm agreeing with you. Yes, and that question, right? Why it's she's such an integral part of San Antonio's identity.
And Ramon, you mentioned Rosedale Park, 1985. That I don't know if that was her first appearance here in San Antonio with Los Dinos or one of her first shows, but it certainly was one of her earliest shows.
Rosedale Park was an outlet for many, many artists. She was an opening act for bigger names at that time. And she spent a lot of time here because all her recordings were done at Meneghetta's studio, 3705 South Flores. So she would come there all the time. And she loved to eat. So there's a restaurant, the Blue Moon, right across the street, and other favorite restaurants around town. It was also here that she did all her photo sessions.
Yeah, that's right.
She liked to go shopping over here. And so San Antonio was like a second home for her.
Yeah. And I think it also makes sense given that, when she launched her boutiques, plural, because, she had one in Corpus where she spent a lot of her formative years, but she also had the one here in San Antonio. In addition to that, there is, I believe she has a star at Hard Rock. I think there was,
Hard Rock,
yeah, there was that. And
she's a part of the Riverwalk now.
part of the Riverwalk, yeah, and of course we were talking earlier in the green room, so to speak, about the biopic that I think for a lot of folks that was kind of their gateway to discovering her, sadly posthumously, but the Jennifer Lopez film, a lot of it was filmed here in San Antonio, and I was doing a college magazine at the time, and me and my buddy, we were trying our darndest to try to get like some interviews with the producers and of course Jennifer Lopez. I think the closest we got was to an after party where one of the producers who was sort of our in did not show up. So we were kind of left on the lurch, but I'll never forget seeing Jennifer Lopez dancing in this club on St. Mary Street. And the crowd just like they opened up around her, and I remember thinking, okay, yeah, she might do okay, in terms of a star, but the film is as much as it is about her life. Yeah, I mean it is almost like a postcard for San Antonio. So I mean, yeah, her roots to the city, I think, are very deep, and I think they'll continue.
Two other tie-ins she had to San Antonio after she went on with Capital EMI. Their office was right here in San Antonio, so she had to make a lot of trips here. And then when she signed up with Coca-Cola, with Leonel Sosa and associates with Mr. Aguilar, the more San Antonio connections.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, we have some more questions here. One, I wanted to ask you, or rather ask for RC here, question for Sonia. How would you say that her legacy has impacted the next generation? You see them, in your classes. So how would you say that her legacy is impacted?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that has been like the greatest point of discovery in teaching the class. And it was one of the initial ideas that and led to to me even envisioning the class was a introductory Mexican American Studies course where I was teaching about the music that's come out of Latino communities and Mexican American communities. So of course we were talking about Tejano, and of course we were talking about Selena, but this was like one day right out of the whole semester. But the love that the students expressed and the curiosity they had to be in the room at the time with the only other person who had been alive at the time that she was alive. And so I just realized there was so much more there to talk through and to figure out what is it that they feel and know about her that is similar or different from my experience and others like me. And so that was just, just a little idea that was planted that then eventually emerged into the class. And so what the class has allowed me and them to do, because I've designed an assignment where they are interviewing fans like themselves. So we're calling them second generation fans, fans born after 1995, about what is it that draws them to Selena. And so we are trying to make sense of what it is that fans are telling us as part of the work that we do in the class. And so I'm learning from them just our interactions in the classroom, but then they go outside of the classroom and collect this information, this knowledge, bring it back into the classroom and present it to us. And so each, semester there's a different set of cohorts that are doing this work. And so what it's pointed to, right, is that she's become very much woven into the fabric of their, however, whatever Latino identity they claim, that it's part of how they practice being that, right? It's how they signify that they're that. And so it's because her music is part of the music of their culture. And so whether it's because it's the most dance to music at the quinces that they're at, whether it's their own or their cousins or their best friends, or it's just the backdrop to their family carne asadas in someone's backyard, right? They have equated, right, Selena, with what it's like to be with family and what it's like to do the things that Mexican American families do. So that's something that I've learned with them in doing this course, that's one of the things that's different about this younger generation of fans.
I think too, you mentioned the quintessential backyard barbecue.
Right.
I just, it is just like, of course, it's like, apple pie for America, if you will. She is synonymous with so much about Mexican American life, certainly entertainment, but just, being. One thing about kind of segueing from there, certainly in terms of Mexican American identity, there are some questions here that came in. Ramon, how do you feel about, we see Selena's image so often these days, and I think like Marilyn Monroe, like James Dean, a lot of these icons generations removed, they're plastered on everything.
That's right.
And I think, just like you see a Loteria card, spoof for anything you can imagine. I swear it gets put with a little number stuff. But that you see that kind of one question, referred to it as whitewashing in a sense. But Ottoman, this question goes to you, is like, how do you feel about Selena's image, being plastered on like t-shirts all over America? I mean, would any of your photos ever end up on that? I'm guessing probably not on the latter, but but certainly your thoughts as far as and I think this goes for both of y'all, is just her image has become so ubiquitous that some might say, it's kind of been commodified, it's kind of become commercialized. Ramon, start with you. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, she can't help but be commercialized. So anytime somebody's big, you're gonna have the bootleg product, the piratas, and all that. But having known her as a teenager and seeing her grow up, you kind of feel like part of the family, like an uncle.
Yeah.
Mi sobrina. And you feel pride. Hey, my sobrina's up there. Murals, aprons, you name it. You go to a flea market today, 30 years after, there's swamp with Selena product and the kids buying them.
Yeah.
And her music, again, we call it Tejano. It's because Tejano's literally Texan. So it's American music, whether it's rhythm and blues, jazz, reggaeton, it's still American music. So Selena's music is American. So it's not, you can't pigeonhole it into one genre.
Right.
It's music for everybody. Actually, it's international.
Well, and and I think sometimes like one of the questions that came in was about, how does whitewashing of Selena in recent media, kind of impact the identity of Tejano women? I I'm not sure I see recent whitewashing. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm.
I think it might be more a sense of just we're, I think about the Netflix series that came out in recent years, and now we have this new documentary
Mhm.
that recently screened at Sundance and South by Southwest, uh, getting a lot of critical acclaim because, like you mentioned, Familia, AB and Suzette,
Mhm.
they are producers. I mean, it's home video. I mean, it is very much a window into her family life. Um, but it's getting out there.
Right.
So I'm not sure if I quite agree with it being whitewashing, but again,
Mhm.
I don't know if that's something you all see in terms of recent media.
We do talk about like the commercialization of her in our class, and that's one of the elements that we kind of dissect about what as a factor to her continued popularity, right? Is it because that it's entirely profit driven, right? And so we students, bring in debate or discourses that they've heard outside of the class of how people kind of like think through that question. But also that we are looking at the the conversations that they have in the interviews that they conduct about people who hold these items like have attached value to them in a way that just has so much significance in what it is and what it was, how much meaning it has for them to be able to find them and that they're available. And so like we're trying to see all sides of
Yeah.
that. And I mean, I'm just I can't um without full context to the question, I'm not sure how they're using whitewashing because I don't think, at least in terms of like the discipline and how I understand it's used in like maybe in academic circles, is that we're taking her away from her Mexican American identity or somehow disassociating her from that. And I don't think that that's what's happened in like media that I've
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
If they're specifically talking about not portraying her, not having actresses that have the same skin tone that she did, if that's what they're talking about, um, and I think that's what the critique was. I don't know if that's um like the most nuanced way to describe what some people perceive might have
Right.
happened.
Right.
I know that I mean I have there are the students that I have, there's a range of how they understand how to classify someone as like a darker skinned Latina versus a lighter skinned Latina. So those are like really
Yeah.
subjective kind of like thresholds to
Yeah.
put.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't erase the fact that systemically, outside of images of Selena, which are still far and few between in the media, it might seem like it's an
Mhm.
overwhelming, but in terms of like the larger mainstream, right, still far and few between.
Yeah.
But it's very true that when Latinas are included in that space, it's typically lighter skinned Latinas.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that pattern certainly exists. So if the question is just to point attention to that continued pattern of those choices, sure, it's there.
Yeah. And I think too, when we speak about uh entertainers of color, when we talk about inevitably those conversations come up about representation, about, well, is he or she really the quote unquote face of that culture? And as I'm sure we all know, diversity is diversity is diversity. I mean, we are, the melting pot. And that menudo's been stirred a lot, those more ingredients come in as the years go on. So I mean, I agree. I mean, I think it is it's complicated. It's probably the easiest way to say it. Sonia, you touched on something earlier about these items that we see. The story that I wrote. and I want to definitely give credit to Melissa Renteria, who also contributed some reporting for that. Thank you, Melissa. Um, I I lead in the story with this young man who has the Guinness World Record for the most Selena collectibles, most memorabilia. He has more than 1,300 items, unique items. I mean, he told me technically he has about 3,000, like some duplicate items.
Mhm.
Um, but and his love for Selena is beyond the obvious. Oh, well, look at all this stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, that's great. But I've done stories on collectors that have Guinness records and just these ginormous collections of items. And it's very much passion. It's very much about passion. And I don't think there's this as many novelties as we do see. I mean, there's a Funko Pop of Selena, and I think you have achieved a unique sense of ubiquity when you have your own Funko Pop, and even though Funko does a pop of pretty much every living and dead human being in pop culture, it still resonates, and it's still, and I think that extends out beyond what I think a lot. There's this sense of, well, she's ours. As gente, she's ours, and that possessiveness. I personally, I think that's fine. I think it doesn't have to be either or. If anything, I think all the more reason she should be celebrated. And
Mhm.
this gentleman who has beyond South Central Texas, if you will, and this gentleman who has this collection, he when he was going for the record, he did it in Lake Jackson, by the way,
Mhm.
when he applied for the record last year, and there were about 600 people that came, a lot of them from South Central Texas, Mexico as well, but he was getting like well wishes from all over the world. I mean, like people from Turkey, like giving him the cheering him on, and I think that, again, that speaks to her global appeal. Um, you know, Getting to that personal sense of personal connection. I mean, Ramon, certainly you have that. One of the questions here is, what was your reaction, when you first met Selena? I mean, she was very young, but again, we've talked about this voice that was mature well beyond her years. I mean, what was it like when you first met?
She was 14,
Mhm.
and of course, the first thing you notice is the quality of her voice. Her voice is just that innate talent
Yeah.
and her showmanship. She just didn't stand there before the microphone and sing. You know, she performed, she danced, she choreographed later. Going back to the whitewashing, to me, whitewashing is like what's going on with the DEI today. That they
Mhm.
purge her name. On the contrary, Selena, nobody's trying to purge her. Look at the stamp they made on her. Look at the stamps they made on her, Celia Cruz, Tito Puente, Carlos Gadel,
Mhm.
the whole set.
Mhm.
That's not whitewashing. So no,
Yeah.
I don't agree with that
Yeah,
part.
it's celebrating. Yeah, I think
So,
it's celebrating.
but going back to Selena, yeah, she was the diamond in the rough, like I previously mentioned, and it's hard to put your finger on it. We're talking about the first day, but later when I started traveling with her, what set her apart from other performers, they rely on radio advertising. They rely on TV advertising. Celine would get to a club. She'd go to the payphone when there was payphones, put the dime in, and start calling people. Hey, I'm performing here at La Bamba. I'm performing at the Hi Ho at the Guys and Dolls, and come on out and check me out.
There were payphones before cell phones. Just
Before beepers,
yeah, yeah. Oh gosh. Oh, there's a good reference.
before
Yeah,
cell
even
phones.
before beepers. Yes, that's right. That's right. And that kind of boots on the ground, sort of promotion. I mean,
Mhm.
there's just no way that format could fly. I mean, of course, now social media, we have so many of these avenues where artists are able to connect directly, to their audience, and it's in a sense she was kind of doing that, just analog as opposed to digital. Um, her one of the other questions that came in here is, she there's this comment rather said, this one person chimed in, makes me happy to see Selena's image on items. She's on my HEB shopping bag.
Mhm.
She's on my cell phone cover, along with Frida Kahlo. I keep her with me and can explain who she is when people ask and see her. It keeps her visible. It keeps her present.
Mhm.
Um, you know, one of the things that does come up here in terms of keeping her present, keeping her very much, in terms of going forward, someone asked here, how can we best preserve her legacy? For those who are personally experienced, her life and death, where like those stories, where were we, when the music died? Those of us who were her age when she died, some of our generation, passed that low to our kids, grandkids. So how this question is asked is like, how do we preserve those live moments of Selena? Uh, I know Ramon, you certainly have something to say about that.
Well, we've come a long way since just a Nikon camera, a Canon, or a Sony camera. Everybody has a cell phone now.
Yeah.
They can get their own videos. Some people even take that cell phone. I shouldn't encourage it and take a video of the YouTube on the TV screen.
Mhm.
But there's so many ways to remember her. You have DVDs on her movies, a Blu-ray.
Mhm.
Oh, you have other artists that have recorded her music and continue to record her music. I remember back in Houston, they had a Vivo Selena concert. Thalia singing Selena, Paulina Rubio singing Selena, Ana Gabriel. I mean, all the major Hispanic Latino artists were recording
Mhm.
Selena. In the salsa market, in the merengue market in 1997, all the salsa stores got together, including Celia Cruz and El Canario, and recorded a salsa and merengue album of Selena's hits. It's her music, but done in merengue, in salsa. So it's out there not only with her voice, but her music's going to be out there forever.
And in terms of those moments when she was live, those certainly this new documentary is a wonderful resource for those times, in her growing career. And the this question here about those stories we have. I mean, you certainly have your stories, your experiences with Selena. Um, Sonia, you as well. I mean, seeing her perform in those last years of her life. I am going to ask you to share that one memory you have, that last show that we had talked about, where I think it was Tejano Rose was at the club.
Mhm.
So tell me about that.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Sure, sure. And I'll just also add it in response to the question was, I mean, one of the ways that I do it in that I feel like my course is helping to do that is through those collection of interviews. So I have my students audio record all of their interviews.
Nice.
And when I started it with the first semester and didn't, really know like where the class was going to go, so I didn't build in as I should have like an infrastructure to really archive and make those interviews available. But now I do see it as part of that larger project. It's a tiny piece, and lots of people have found ways to memorialize her, over the past 30 years that I think are all working because we're here today, right? This very conversation. But that's just like one way that I feel I'm a teeny tiny part of that process, right? That at least at some way, right? Someone's getting to tell their stories and we're documenting it in some way. But for your other question about my particular personal memory, the last time I got to see her perform here in San Antonio, and I do remember seeing her at least 4 times
Mhm.
while I was a college student, and it was because I was a fan of Tejano music, so I saw lots of Tejano artists. But those particular four performances really do stand out, especially after her death. But the last one was just a few months before she was killed, and I'm pretty sure it was over like Christmas break between semesters is when I think it happened. But I went to a local Tejano dance club here in San Antonio with my now husband and his brother, my brother-in-law, and it was one of those places where you could stand right in front of the stage and watch the act perform. And so that's where we were most of the night, right? Just within a few, an arm's length of the band. And when they took a break for intermission, came back in the second act and opened the act, I remember just being really struck that one, she had changed, like so she wasn't wearing what she opened the show in, and what she came out in was what I recall as a outfit very similar to the iconic purple jumpsuit, that same kind of like halter pantsuit, bell bottom flare outfit, but it was white.
Hmm.
And they opened with the disco medley. And I just remember being really shocked and stunned at the time, because in my own world, my pop music was very separate from my Tejano music.
Yeah.
And so it was just like this weird kind of like merging, even though like language wise, that was very common, right? She would be singing in Spanish but you would hear people talking in English, or, just the same way the radios were. So, but it was just the music that was just, I just noted it. And I remember thinking at the time, are people going to even like it? Like this, particularly disco and in English. Everybody's here to dance Tejano, and everybody here is dressed like a Tejano fan, boots and belt buckles and cowboy hats and all. And so
Furthest thing from disco. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm like, this is such a disconnect. And so I remember turning around, like to look at the dance floor behind me, like, are people going to dance to it? Because it just seems like so, out of pocket. So I did. And yes, people were dancing and absolutely loving it. And so I remember after the show as well, when we were, grabbing some tacos from Taco Cabana, wherever we went, like bringing up the conversation. And then we were asking, what does it mean? Is she going to start recording in English? Why do you think they chose that? And just kind of like, wrestling with our own kind of questions of like identity and navigating the space of these two worlds in that moment after the show. And so it wasn't until, after the tragedy of her death, and I'm not even sure how long it was from that point that I saw the footage of the concert at the Houston Astrodome, that I realized we saw them do that opening number, and just how precious and special it was.
Yeah. And it was exactly the way she had started the famous Houston concert, with like Donna Summer and like this disco medley. And yeah, it is kind of at first a disconnect, because you're just like, okay, English, what? It just seemed, but then, of course, when she was growing up, I mean, she was singing English songs. I mean, it was Abraham that kind of told us, like, mija, you got to sing Tejana. I mean, you gotta sing the voice of your people, the voice of our people, the language. And she learned Spanish, later as opposed to sooner. And she was able to, I don't want to say fake it till you make it kind of, but she was accepted as much because, again, it was all very genuine, where she came from with that. But you bringing up the point about that time period in the early to mid 90s, where she was looking into that kind of English crossover. Of course, a month later from that Houston show, she was killed. One of the questions here is kind of, I think we all have that, where were you when it happened? Ramon, I know you had mentioned when we had spoken before about how you found the news.
I was doing an article on and so I typed, I checked my email. Somebody, no, there are no emails, fax.
Your fax, that's right.
Fax machine.
Yes, another element of technology younger viewers may not know of, but yes, that's right, a fax.
But I got a fax on it, and said Selena was just murdered by Emilio's wife, Cindy. See, Cindy and Emilio were performing together a lot. They were both spokespersons for Coca-Cola. So they did a lot of promo gigs together.
So the initial news that you get...
So you know how people are.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And shame on them for thinking that way, but that's what the facts read. Selena, Emilio's wife just killed Selena. And
wow.
I said, nah, no way. So then I started making calls, and I started getting other calls, and found out the true story.
Yeah.
But at first, like, even if a family member were to pass, you're speechless. You're lost for words. You just, you don't. It doesn't sink in. You're in shock. And then when you start doing the obit, and it hits you,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you just feel the tears.
Yeah.
It just starts flowing.
Yeah. Sonia, do you remember when you found out?
Yeah, certainly. I was on my college campus. At the time, I was editor of the college newspaper at St. Mary's, and so I was working in that office. And I typically commandeered the radio and had it on KXDN, and would play Tejano music in the office. And so the radio station was playing, so the news came over the radio, and I remember being in utter disbelief. And I just thought, this is just like a crazy rumor. Like, we're gonna find out the truth pretty soon. And so
Yeah.
crazier things were being said, exactly like that particular
Mm.
explanation for what happened. This was, very different from how we kind of like get news at us today. It was coming through slow. It was like, these kinds of wild stories initially that were being reported. So it was over the course of the afternoon that it became clear what happened. There was still reporting
Yeah.
of the standoff. Like it just was this whole drawn out afternoon that was the closest thing to like, Twitter, right? Was the radio space
Oh yeah.
for what was going on.
That was as instant
Yeah,
as
it
you
was
could
as you could get it.
because television really, um, I think outside of probably the Corpus affiliates,
Mhm.
um, there you did not have that kind of
Like instantaneous, just
yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't that
So
moment.
really it was kind of radio, and the way the radio stations were learning about it were basically from people
Right,
calling them,
right.
likely from payphones.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just like, oh my God, this is really happening.
Yeah.
Um, we're of course now being 30 years. One of the first questions that came in was in regards to Yolanda Saldívar, and the question is, do you think her safety will be a concern if she's granted parole? Um, I don't think we need to get too much into the mounds of dislike and disdain that so many fans, rightfully have. Um, but I also kind of wonder, we're in 2025, accessibility, et cetera. It's a very different thing. Um, I'm not sure how y'all want to answer that. I mean, I think it's something that, kind of needs to be addressed because
Mhm.
I think for a lot of us fans, the idea that her convicted killer, um, has an opportunity at freedom. I mean, it's got to be a very jarring, to say the least. Um, Maybe to couch that a little better, I think would be what should that happen? Should the parole happen? I mean, how do y'all think that is going to impact um, Selena's, you know, legacy in terms of like, are more people going to discover it? I would imagine those who aren't already dialed in. Um, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
Ladies first.
Um, I mean, I'm glad that it's not a decision that I have to make.
Yeah.
And I do think that those decision makers probably need to are considering that as well. But I think the bigger issue, right, is do they think she has paid her due for the act that she committed? Um, and that's a much larger question. And again, one that I'm certainly not qualified to answer. And I mean, I do think that there would be a shift. I don't know if that's the right if, way to articulate that, but there would be something that would happen um, with her legacy, right? If that becomes an element of the story.
Right.
that's told, and there's already a really well loved and well maintained kind of narrative about who she was and why we love her and what she accomplished, and that would throw kind of like a wrench in that story that
Exactly.
would need a lot of like ironing out, and
Yeah.
I don't know what that consequence would be, but it would definitely change the narrative.
And I think that's a great word to use, narrative, because her story, um, up until, the end of this month has been a very set story, uh, in terms of her death, in terms of, the conviction, and it's almost like end credits. That has been set. And clearly, depending on what happens in the next few weeks, that could change. That said, I don't think it's going to take anything away from Selena's legacy. I mean, it may kind of shift things in terms of what's on the front burner, so to speak. But I think if anything, it will magnify just the sheer tragedy of her loss. Um, one of the questions that came in, um, was also, I guess, more of a story. This person chimed in. I remember seeing Selena at T-Town. I think that's what it says here. I was underage at the time, but my late sister knew the bouncers, and I was able to attend, and I was in awe when I saw her performing. To this day, have the pictures of Selena performing that day. Okay, I would love to get in touch with you about that because that's really cool. Those memories, um, that those are immortal. Those are timeless. And I think, again, speaking to the relatability, the accessibility, being at arm's length in so many ways, I think, as a personality, as a performer, person, I would, I would, I would hope, but I'm pretty confident those are the things that are going to make the most noise when it comes to Selena's legacy.
Can I share a real quick story that a
Please.
student
Yes.
told? I'm trying to remember now if it was a student that shared the story or if it was one of their interviewees, but I think it's kind of telling about like the power of those lived memories, and then even how we're passing them on. That was like an earlier question, like how do we keep her memory right alive, or how do we preserve this
Right.
legacy? And so it was a experience where the student's mother was a teenager at the time during Selena's career, and Selena was shopping at South Park Mall here in San Antonio, and the student's mother was there at South Park Mall at the time.
Wow.
But she wasn't aware of who Selena was, and so she saw commotion of like people gathering around her or like moving,
Yeah.
towards wherever she was, like as the information was spreading across the mall, and that her mom finally realized, after there's this horde of people that she couldn't even get through, even if she tried,
Yeah.
right, of who it was and what was happening, or at least the name of the person that it was. And so she never made an effort like to go, to try to say hi to her or get an autograph or anything like that. But for the daughter who was in my class, like even that proximity to her, which wasn't even really close,
Yeah.
right, was so important. Like it was like her own story.
Okay.
And so that's one of the really cool things that has happened through the student interviews, is the ways that those stories have been passed along generationally and how much meaning they have. So even though like the mom wasn't even a Selena fan, she didn't know her music, but she was in the same building
Yeah.
as Selena for
Yeah,
like
we were all
a 5-minute time,
under that same roof.
yes,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
enough. That
Yeah.
was enough, right? And
Yeah.
so anyway, I think it just kind of speaks to
No, it does. And that sense of connection, however tangential.
Mhm.
There was one question that came in, for Ramon, you know, uh, is your first interview of Selena at Rosedale Park on YouTube? Or will it ever be released? I don't think you had the phone camera at the time,
No.
I'm guessing. But I know when I went to do the interview with you, and photos and stuff, your house is the museum, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
just the sheer amount, it's incredible, those images and those resources and those, of course, the interviews that you've done with so many voices in Tejano, cumbia music. Um, do you have any plans to kind of piggybacking on that question? I'm not sure if you have anything to post to YouTube, but journalist pack rat that you are, you have stuff. Okay. So is that something that you ever see like putting out there in terms of online?
Well, my lifetime goal, my ultimate goal is to realize a physical structure, bricks and mortar, a museum.
Right.
As a commissioner of the Texas Music Hall of Fame, it should happen within 3 years or so. At that time, we will have an extensive exhibit on Selena.
Nice.
But there's already the ultimate Selena Museum in Corpus Christi
Mhm.
Yep.
at Q Productions.
That's
You
right.
know, they also another way people are remembering Selena, and there's no way to. It's just like legendary figures from the Civil War, from back to George Washington. There's statues on Selena. How many Tejano artists, how many Chicano artists can boast of having a statue in San Antonio, in
Yeah.
Monterrey, in Corpus, everywhere? How about busts that they have at different museums? And then the museums themselves have exhibits on Selena.
Yeah.
The one,
Yeah. You mentioned, of course,
Mhm.
one, a person that chimed in, about, is there a Selena archive?
Mhm.
If so, where does it exist? Um, Corpus? That,
Um,
I mean, would it come close, would
the
you say?
difference, forgive me
No, please, please.
for the difference between what I have and other people don't have, and I don't know why they don't want to make it public.
Hmm.
The photographs that I took during the time that I was on the road with her, they are during the period that they were paying their dues.
Yeah.
In other
Uh,
words, there's a photograph of Abraham driving the bus, old Bertha. They couldn't afford a bus driver.
Yeah.
Then we get to the gig and they're unloading the equipment. Who's the roadie? Abraham and the rest of the crew. They didn't have roadies. You set up the sound. Who's working the sound, board? Abraham.
Yeah.
Something goes wrong electrically. Abraham's the electrician. Selena and the rest of the crew in a cold winter night or in the bus without heat, waiting to come into the club. The look on their faces, those are pictures nobody's seen. You might get glances of them at some of the TV documentaries.
Yeah.
Then they go inside the venue and the microphone doesn't work. Call the technician? No, Selena was a technician.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can
You
see
wear
the
you wear a lot of hats when you're
yeah.
yeah, when you're starting
Was
up like
working
that.
the light
Yeah.
board. Her mother Marcela and Amy's first wife Vanjie.
Yeah.
But when she comes out in front of the curtain, all of a sudden those symptoms of the flu and that tiredness, that weariness, that being sleepy, that goes away, and she turns into to a superstar,
Mhm.
and puts on one
Yeah.
hell of an act.
Yeah. You know, in terms of photos, some of the questions coming in were about, we'd love to see those photos. Well, the beauty of video is that we can actually show some. I'm going to put this right here. This photo was taken at that famous uh,
Rosa Parks.
Rosedale Park, 1985. I think it was November 1985, I believe.
November was the date of the article.
Okay,
That
maybe
was
it was
that
this.
was probably
I
before
think it was okay. Was it before? Maybe but this is, of course, you can see Selena right here.
Selena.
And this was, gosh, she would have been what, 14 at that time? I mean,
She was 14 right
she was a
there.
kid.
Yeah.
My goodness. So yes, that was taken in 1985 at Rosedale Park. We have another image here, because you did photograph her for her early albums,
Right.
and this one here is,
That was the first ever photo session we did.
wow.
And you can see that leopard print pillow.
Yeah,
And you know, she went through the motions like going like this and going like this. And
yeah,
and
yeah,
then she started getting restless. I mean, she was like hyper. I mean, she was like the Energizer Bunny. And then all of a sudden she picks up the pillow and she's playing peekaboo and then she's holding it over her head. Then she throws it at me and she finds a feather and starts playing with it. And I mean, it was like nonstop show.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just doing the simple photo session, but she was a natural model. I mean, you could just put the camera on a tripod, don't tell her what to do, and you're gonna get a great set of pictures.
Yeah. And, in terms of her image, as she was starting to cultivate that, we have,
A lot of artists, they hire
Denim-
PR people
denim
to
face here.
create your image and help
Yeah.
you select the wardrobe and the hairstyles. In Selena's case, she would always tinker around and experiment with anything off the rack and add to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, so that's one of her outfits that she picked out.
Yep. And we also have this photo that you took. This would have tell us about this one because this was
I did 7 album covers for Selena, and
Mhm.
after every photo session, we would always take a picture together. So that's her and the band, and then AB took off his coat, and we took a picture together. And that was for the Preciosa album, which is a close up of her face.
Mhm. Right. And I gotta say, I really enjoy, of course, you have that photo, the okay, we are the artists kind of photo, and then you gotta have fun too. So I love this one. I love this shot. Just I think again that energy that
Yeah. The
just
whole band, not only her, but it was contagious.
yeah. I
mean,
was
you're
gonna say it's
Selena, you're
infectious.
having
Yeah,
fun.
I was like, it is infectious, and we see some of the older interviews that she did over the years, and
Mhm.
you mentioned on one how she'd be doing television or whatever, and then of course fans are all over and they're
Mhm.
waving and she's waving, she's acknowledging them,
Yeah.
even in the midst of the press whirlwind that she was starting to go through more and more as her fame rose, always, yeah. So I wonder if I'm not sure, do we have a little more time, Monty? A little bit more time. Okay, cool. So some folks are chiming in here. Really appreciate the conversation. Wondering if possible, the recording of it may be available to rewatch. Yes, yes. We're not sure when you're going to have your stuff on YouTube, but we will definitely have ours on YouTube. And we have a YouTube channel, and we have all our in vivo shows and Q&As there, and this will be among them. So yes, definitely appreciate you asking, and we very much appreciate being able to share. Another person chimes in here. I never got to see her or even know her past the movie. And I think we say the movie, I'm guessing she's referring to the 1997 biopic. But the movie has forever made an impact on my life because you hear about the talent that was taken so young, but so impactful. And this person chimes in, I'm not Hispanic, but she definitely touched different cultures. And I would love to follow her fan base and groups if there are any, and send my condolences to all affected by her loss. I love the music and the movie dedicated to her. Again, speaks to the reach. Her talents definitely go well and beyond. Another person chimes in that her black leather outfit in a video of her performance is part of the Entertainment Nation National Exhibit at Smithsonian in Washington, D.C.
Right.
Definitely. Ramon, question for you. What was your favorite cover?
My favorite cover?
Yeah, I hope it's conveniently here. I don't know if it is.
No.
If not, just as shameless self-promotion, the story that I and Melissa Renteria and I wrote will be on expressnews.com first thing Monday morning, and will include the answer to that question. We'll have a bunch of photos that Ramon has graciously shared, so everyone can see that that early, excessively energetic side to Selena. That's so much a part of what we all know and love about her.
As for the favorite cover, it's like asking a parent,
Your favorite
"Who's your
child.
favorite kid?"
Yeah, yeah.
My favorite song is Dame un beso.
Yeah.
That,
Okay.
that I can tell you, yeah.
Well, I'd be remiss if I don't ask. Your favorite song? You have to pick one in this case.
I know.
That's the hard part. Yeah.
Yeah, probably Chico de Apartamento 512. I just love the narrative behind that. And so when pressed, that's the one that I'll go to. But it really is contextual. It depends on whether I want to, if I'm able to dance, then I want it to be something else.
Yep.
Um,
I know it's low hanging fruit, but
Yeah.
Bitty Bitty Bomb Bomb, because saying the name makes you smile. I mean, it is just this fun, fun song. And of course the story behind it, I think, is kind of fun too. I believe Selena she kind of was just doing gibberish during a sound check or something when she was recording. And yeah, her gibberish is incredible as well. You know, but I think as fun as the song is, as great a beat as it has, and all, and just that it comes from such an organic, unexpected place like that. And it's just Selena being Selena. You know, I think, you know, again, just that fun, goofy side to her that is so much a part of what we love about her. Um, I'm not sure. Is that our time? I guess. Okay. Well, on that note, on that very positive, fun note, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and submitting their questions. We certainly did our best to get to as many as we could, but we thank you for all of your insights and shared stories and your questions. Kind of looking ahead here, Sonia, what's sort of in your future, Selena, or maybe even non-Selena related?
Well, the course is going to be offered in the fall of 2025. So hopefully there's maybe some students at UTSA who haven't had the chance to take it yet, or would love to. So yeah, I'd love to see you in my class.
The enrollment may go up over the summer, you know. We'll see. And I know, Ramon, obviously very hard at work with the Hall of Fame. You know, what any other th-
I'm finishing up a book on Sunny and the Sunliners, Sunny and the Sunglows. After that, I'm doing a book on women Tejano music from 1927 to 1995.
nice.
And Selena will be on the cover of that book, and Lydia Mendoza. And this is where all the female Tejano vocalists get recognized, even if it's a paragraph or a picture or whatever. But hopefully, I'm trying to be as thorough as I can be for that one.
Right.
And of course, we hope to bring that museum to fruition.
Oh,
and I do exhibits too. So
that's right. Yeah. Well, and you have so much to share, both y'all, and I really appreciate you both sharing it, you know, here with us today. I guess that's our way of signing off. Thank you all very much for tuning in, and catch you next time.